Hello and welcome to the SUMIF tutorial. In an earlier tutorial we talked about using format as table and the total row as a way of filtering data to get things like total number of units sold or total profit based upon a certain criteria, for instance like a salesperson's name. That works fairly well if you need to get kind of quick numbers, but let's say you're in a situation where you want to monitor things so that if additional records get added, you have kind of a running tally based on your salesperson's name. In a situation like that, a function called SUMIF can be really handy. It's also a little bit of a time saver in that if you go the filtering method through format as table, it's just kind of cumbersome, where the SUMIF function just streamlines the process a little bit. So let's say I'm interested in getting maybe the total profit made by my salesman, Mr. Walpole. So I'm just going to add that into a cell just so I know what the number is supposed to reflect. Again, I'll kind of double click there to widen out the column. And I will go just beneath that title into a blank column, and I'm going to take a walk over to my Formulas tab. Now, SUMIF is contained in one of these libraries, but let's say, for instance, I don't want to do the search. I can simply go and click the Insert Function button. And where it says type a brief description, I'm just going to type the word sum and click go. And it brings up a whole series of sum calculations. In this case, I only want SUMIF. And if I click on SUMIF, it defines it as being a function that adds the cells specified by a given condition or criteria. So I go ahead and I click OK. And that brings up a function wizard, basically a little form that will guide me through the process of creating the actual function. The first item I have to put in is the range of cells, the range of cells that I want evaluated. That's the definition right down here. So since I'm looking for profit based on the person's name, the actual range I want to evaluate is the column that contains people's names. The easiest way to select the entire column is to click on the letter representing the column. Now it puts in this kind of odd reference, but what it's actually saying is I am looking at the entire B column. So if someone comes along and adds additional rows into this table and there's data in another cell in that B column, new data will be automatically included in the SUMIF calculation. So if I go click by criteria, criteria is the condition or criteria in the form of a number, expression, or text that defines the cells that will be added. So in essence, it's asking, okay, what do you want me to look for in the B column? What we want to look for is Walpole's name. So I'm just going to go and type in Walpole exactly as it appears in the table. I click in the third field, which is the sum range, and the sum range is the actual cells to sum up. If omitted, the cells in range are used. So what I want to add up are the profits. So, and specifically the profits made by Mr. Walpole. But the sum range I need to evaluate is the profit column. So I similarly click the letter at the top of that column and tell Excel I want to look at everything in that column, and anything that is associated with Walpole's name, I want you to take that total and sum those totals all together. And you'll notice it even gives me the total here as a sample. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK, and I see the profits that were made by Walpole. $74,366. Now, if I want to cross-check this, I could very quickly go click here, go back to my Data tab, turn on those filtering arrows, and I could go and filter by the sales person's name of Walpole. And if I click OK, you'll see that it filters down the data. And if I come along here and I highlight these numbers, Walpole has had a fair number of sales. I'll see that down here the sum does equate to 74,366, which is exactly what we want it to be. Now, as I said earlier, let's say for whatever reason Mr. Walpole comes along. I'm quickly just going to duplicate a record here. And in fact, I'll turn the filtering off. And you'll see that the SUMIF still works perfectly fine. So I'm going to select all. I'll go OK. Now, if I come along in here and I'm just going to quickly duplicate a record just to kind of show you how it works. I could enter a new record by hand, but I'm just going to quickly duplicate one. Go down to the very end here. And I'm going to pretend that this sale was done on December 23 in 2010. And I'll tap my enter key. And if I come up here, I should see that the SUMIF calculation, the amount has increased. And again, if I want to do a double check, just as I did before, I simply select Mr. Walpole, I click OK, and as I did before, if I go and I highlight the amounts now, I should find that it does equate to that same number that's up in here. So I'm going to go ahead and maybe just for aesthetic reasons, I'll go back home, I'll throw dollar signs onto it. I will also go and clear the filter. Okay, so I can get criteria based on that, but I can actually use this same method to get SUMIFs for even item names. So I can come along in here and I can say waffle iron total profit. And again, these are just arbitrary titles that I'm throwing up at the top. I'm just making them up as I go along. But the SUMIF is going to work the same way. So I come along in here into an empty cell. I'm going to go to my formulas once again. I'll go insert function. And since I looked for SUMIF before, it should be remembered down here in this list. So if I go ahead and I just made sure it's selected, as long as it's highlighted in blue, that's perfect. If not, I can click on it. I click OK, and again the wizard comes back. So this time around, the range of cells I want evaluated is going to be here, the item names. The criteria, I click down there, and I'm going to put in waffle iron. And I want to make sure it's the same case, that it's spelled exactly the same way that it is in my collection of data. I'm going to click the sum range. And again, like the last example, because I'm looking for the total profit based on waffle irons, I'm going to select the profit column. And I'm going to OK it. And I'm going to find that we made some pretty good money on waffle irons. Again, I'll jump back. I'll throw in some dollar signs. One more time, if I'm still suspicious about all of this, I can click the drop-down arrow by item. I can take away select all and choose only the waffle irons. I can OK that. And once again, as a cross-check, you'll notice that only waffle irons are coming up. I'll go and I will highlight. And I should find that this number down here and this number down here are exactly the same. I will go and I will take the filter off of item. That returns us to all of our records. One little side note to point out, if I've went and I've used format as table, you might find that I can't use the option to go and choose the entire column by its headings. I might in fact have to click the first cell in the column and then shift click the last cell in order to tell Excel what the range is in that respect. I found that when I went and formatted it as a table, it just made it a little more complicated because of this merged cell with the title up at the top. So keep in mind, if you format as table, you may have to pull a couple of tricks to tell it the specific range of cells to look at rather than just using your column headings.